Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Travis Bliffen from Stellar SEO, which is a top-rated US link building agency. And we are going to be talking about link building strategies, about guest posting, about content creation, all kinds of fun things. So Travis, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be talking to you as well. Thanks for having me on, and never like to miss an opportunity to talk about SEO, link building, and content.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's good to be passionate about what you do. If the whole point was just to like slog through and hate what you're doing, we'd all be in a 9 to 5. So that's good that you are doing this thing that you love, which is being in this honest and leading SEO agency. So, I mean, what has you excited these days? What is kind of like in your mind, like the cutting edge or the thing that just kind of gets you out of bed in the morning?
I mean, so my favorite thing is by nature I've always been a competitive person, and SEO, link building, they're both extremely competitive. Uh, in the fact that everything you do, every customer you work with, or every industry that you work in, there's always going to be a set of competition that are doing extremely well, and there's always going to be that group of people who wish they were doing what the leading few companies were. And so what I enjoy the most about it, and have for the past several years, is actually being able to go out, identify what those people are doing that are having all the success, and be able to replicate that and recreate that for people and help them move up. So basically all day, every day, I come in and I help put together a strategy and kind of lead the charge in what I view to be a competition between companies. And so all things aside, there's constant changes, constant fluctuations. Google seems all over the place sometimes with what they like and don't like. But the one constant in everything I do is that you get to be competitive against other companies, against yourself, against Google in some cases. And that's definitely the part that drives me every day to do what I do. And what keeps it interesting is there's never a shortage of competitors.
That's good. I think that's a healthy way of looking at that friendly competition. And you snuck in there. There's also the competition with your past self to kind of better your best and I think that, we probably have all dealt with at one point or another, how it's painful at first to look at your competitors, right? Because sometimes they somehow had the idea before you, or you had that idea that you were sitting on and they did a way better job than you would have. And then there's that kind of aspect of there's so many successful people out there that kind of, it's not like I don't know, they say one thing and do another kind of, right? Like they talk about you see them posting videos, but then when you go and like do your research, you're like, whoa, I'm only looking at what they're doing on their own platform. And I see them just, posting a video a day or sending out an email a week. But then you see, whoa, they're like busting their butt on all these other, podcasts. They're doing guest posting. So that took me years to get past the muck. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but number one, it was painful to look at the competitors. And number two, I wasn't doing enough of really like spying on them and stalking them, so to speak, and places other than their own websites.
See, that's the really, I found to be really interesting thing about online business in the first place, is that a lot of times the entire perception you have of a company, big or small, good or bad, is really tied to the channel in which you discovered them. So if your main focus, if you evaluate every company by their activity on Facebook, for example, then there's going to be a group of SEO agencies, of marketers, of people that really focus on promoting theirself on Facebook. And so in that perceived reality, those must be the companies having the most success. And then if you go off of Facebook and you look at something else, you look at, roundups of major media companies, you see that nobody on Facebook is also in that list of the fastest growing marketing agencies in the country, because they're out there doing a different place and in a different way. And then sometimes you have that overlap where you see people across multiple platforms, and on all platforms they've managed to make a big impact. And so those are a lot of times the people that really do excel, because it's really easy to get fixated on a particular platform and think, okay, since I see them all day, every day on Facebook, for example, this company must really be well known. And then you talk to anybody that's not on Facebook and doesn't join that particular group you might be in, and they've never heard of them. And so I always think that's really funny, just how the method of discovery can completely change your perception of a company. And you're right, whenever you go and you say, okay, I'm going to try to figure out how I can be competitive with this person, sometimes you start to unravel that, and you might find the people who are very dominant on Facebook basically don't exist anywhere else, outside of Facebook. And the same is true for Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram. They're just in one area. And so it's always really interesting to see when we start getting into that kind of competitor discovery phase, who's actually having a lot of success across the board, and which people are more, more show than they are having success. And you uncover that a lot too in what we're doing. So I always find that to be kind of an amusing part.
So when you say they're more show than they are success, does that mean that it's just like they're spending all their time posting and keeping up appearances, but you don't see them actually like making money or doing any real work? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I mean in that you'll see certain people, and by their own self, the content that they put out about themselves, they would lead you to believe that they must be extremely successful, doing really great work, extremely well known, and then you go away from that one single platform, one single area, and they're non-existent. They don't have a footprint or a presence in anywhere other than that. And so I see that a lot, people selling, courses, trainings, and it seems like Facebook is like a hot spot for that, particularly of, the 10,000 gurus who have the training course to solve every problem you've ever had for no money and little effort. And but then you go out and you see other people who, they actually do training, but they do training for corporations. They do enterprise level trainings. They have real foundation. They have real training. It's not cheap. It's not fast. It's not easy. But those are the companies that you really take a deeper look at because they've been around for 20, 30, 40 years, successfully doing that, and they've evolved and they've grown. And so that's when we are doing research, when we're building out strategies, that's who we really try to look at, is who's doing this kind of in an evergreen fashion. And some stuff when it comes to online marketing seems like it's really new, but content marketing, for example, has been around since, what was it, 1890 or something, when the magazine came out, which was the first official content marketing. So there's a lot that you can learn by focusing on who you look at and who you research. And I'm not really sure how we got to that point of it, but yeah, I do see a lot of stuff, and it does make me question what those people are up to, and how many people are actually buying what seems to be a obnoxious and unrealistic thing that they're offering. And that could be services, coaching, products. There's any number of things where you see the same thing repeat day in and day out.
And that is, I mean, it's good to think about that because sometimes in that competition that we mentioned earlier, in the pursuit of saying, oh well, this person is marketing in a way that I'm not, or I might be a little envious of what they're doing. We might be like, doing all this work just to catch up on someone who is just keeping up those sorts of appearances. So when you say that, you mentioned a few times that you figure out a strategy, and so what does that mean exactly? Does that mean like you see what they're doing already, you see what their content is, and then you like pursue new platforms like other blogs, or say maybe they should post on LinkedIn or YouTube, or like when you talk about like the strategy, like kind of what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so it kind of goes in multiple steps, but the very first thing, and this is where a lot of people run into strategy issues, is that they do see somebody like that person on Facebook, or Twitter, Instagram, and they think, okay, they have, 2 million followers on here. They must be really just doing a great job, and this is the channel. This is what I should be doing as well to have success. But then you start to unravel that and you look at what companies have been around for very long, what companies are sending out signals of growth and success, and who is their audience. Because if you are pulling all of your audience from Facebook, and a different company pulls all of their audience from Twitter, and company number three pulls all of their audience from organic search, right? They might have three completely different target markets. And so the very first step in building that strategy is to figure out if those people that you think are your competitors or you think are having success in what you do are actually even targeting the same people that you are. And so that's the very first step of building a strategy, is making sure that you are not trying to replicate the marketing approach of somebody with a different ideal customer than your own. From there, that's when we go out and we look at people who seem to be targeting the same types of customers that would be the ideal customer for our client. And that's when you start to build a strategy by looking at where does their traffic come from. We're focused very much on the organic and content side, so we look at what is their top performing content, what are the top sources of organic traffic, what content on their site got the most publicity, got the most people to link to and mention it, because that starts to help you build this model of what you should and should not be doing to appeal to your ideal customer. Because if you go and you just copy somebody else blindly, you might get leads and you might make sales, but you might find out after a few months that everybody you work with isn't even close to what you wanted to be working with when you set out. And so that's kind of how we go about, at a very high level, building out a strategy. And also that's where we see most people run into issues, is that they don't first figure out if those other people that they perceive as successful are targeting the same group. And so from there, it's just a matter of unraveling where their traffic comes from, where they're advertising, who's linking to them, what content they have, and you pull that all together, and that's how you can build a plan that may not be showy, but it grows sustainably and it gets the right people in front of you. And that's even something we've applied to our own business. Um, we're not big on social media. We're not big on paid advertising, because we found that the ideal customers we like to work with are searching for the types of services we offer. They're doing due diligence. They're comparing some of the top companies, and so for us, that's how we generate our customers, is by using organic search, because those are the people that we typically want to work with, versus the types of leads that often are generated with paid advertising, social media platforms, things like that. So it's a really good strategy to follow. Unfortunately, people get shiny object syndrome, and then they go down 100 different rabbit trails, and then they can't figure out why they're not really gaining traction, or why they're not getting the right types of people to contact them. And so that's kind of how we look at strategy development and at the highest level.
And in your answer there, what kept coming to mind was you mentioned a few times the people, right? It's easy to say, oh, we'll look at the data, or we'll think of a bunch of things and see what works. But what you're saying is you look at those competitors, you look at what they're doing, you look at their audience, you see like the good performing content. There's a lot of in your thought process, there's a lot of like, okay, there's these people that are the competitors, there's these people that are the customers, and it seems like kind of going from that mindset, it's easy, or it's easier to figure out where to be and what sort of content to create, as opposed to just kind of playing any kind of weird games. And what's also cool is that you mentioned there is that you say you don't necessarily like the social media or the paid ads as much. You like the organic content, Google guest posting kinds of strategies. And I like that you practice what you preach. Like I Googled your name for like 2 seconds right before we got on here, and I saw all the pages of your guest posts on other platforms. You're on SEMRush, you're on Search Engine Journal. So do you have any like interesting story for like how that came to be, that kind of high profile thing? Because sometimes you'll see someone will get a guest blog post on like Forbes or Entrepreneur, and then that's kind of all they'll do all year. So as far as like getting on, say, like a SEMRush or a search engine journal, like did that come about as part of your strategy? And like, did you have to like build up to that or like work on them specifically, or how did you get these kind of high profile guest posts, and how did it lead to that?
Yeah. So really, what's funny is um, one of the very first places that I contributed content to was Website Magazine. And I did that a few years ago. And since their website has changed hand a few times, and it's not, uh, as far as I can tell, it's not quite as popular as it was. But 3, 4 years ago, they had a very engaged audience, huge email subscriber list. And so I ran across that in doing my own research on multiple occasions. And I thought, well, if I keep seeing this site pop up, they've got to have a lot of content that's relevant to what I'm doing. So I reached out and I essentially pitched them on a couple of ideas. And so that was one of the first places that I wrote for. And then uh, I wrote a couple articles and they went over extremely well. And some of them I think are still the more popular articles they've ever had on their site. And so from there, it actually went to me writing. I wrote for a year or two a weekly column for Website Magazine. Um, and so using those, I kind of did the leapfrog approach where I would reach out to other sites and say, here's 20 articles I've written about this topic on Website Magazine. Here's an idea I've had for your site, and then they would be more open to it because they could see some current and good examples. You got the proof somebody else published what you wrote, and then so you do that leapfrog, and so you might go from that to business to community. I think at the time was a big one. And so they kind of leapfrogged SEMRush, right? SEMRush over to Search Engine Journal. So you just kind of build momentum, and once you get your foot in the door, then you just kind of move your way up. And so we did that a lot a couple years ago. Um, we don't guest post as much now as a company anymore, and I don't now either, because we essentially, in starting there, that's how we established ourselves in the space, because we would write content for those websites about what we do. It would rank because it was on high authority websites, and we would generate leads before our own website could generate leads itself, right? And so over the time, we actually acquired enough links from sites like that that our website now generates the leads for us. And so we've been able to be more passive in the places that we would contribute content to or write for, because we filled up the pipeline. But going back to the beginning, that's how we started. Is we made our own website. We needed to get some good quality links, and the easiest way to do that without a budget was guest posting. So I created the content. I used that leapfrog approach. Fast forward to today, basically, if you look at link building services, guest posting services, blogger outreach services, and a bunch of related terms, we rank for all of those. So now we don't have to go and contribute content, because they come to us, right? So now we switch to creating content for our own website, and so that's really the next evolution. And that's the same approach that we often would recommend for clients. Is using that leapfrogging approach, building up your own authority, building up your own inbound traffic, and from there transitioning into content and promoting content on your own website. And so that's a really good way to go from non-existent, because when we started, I started the company myself in 2012, had no experience with SEO, had no experience in business, and didn't have a budget either. So basically, I picked up a magazine, flipped through, found this list that had um, best industries to get into in 2013, and one of those was SEO. And I thought, man, this sounds really interesting. And so I started researching it. I actually went on to, uh, I think it's called Upwork now. I forget what Elance or something like that before.
It used to be
So
Odesk.
Odesk. So I went on to there, and that's actually where I got some of my very first customers. And all I did was write blog content for them, right? So I was learning about SEO at the time, and I was writing blog content because optimized blog content was part of it. So I'm like, well, this is you don't really mess this up, and it's a good way to start making some money while you're still learning. Um, and so that actually led to my first SEO client is somebody hired me for creating blog content, and then after a little while, I started talking to him about SEO. Told him, essentially, I'm pretty new at this, but I think I've got a really strong grasp. They paid me a little bit of money, and I did a lot of work, and at the end of the day, it worked out for him really well. And so that's where I started. So it's just a matter of starting and then building steps along the way. I saw something the other day somewhere on social media, and it said, don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 17. And it was that famous photo of Jeff Bezos where he's got the desk that he made himself, and Amazon.com's like spray painted on the wall.
Yeah, it's like
I,
graffiti. Yeah,
yep.
spray painted. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that's kind of, we started where a lot of people start, basically non-existent, no experience, no budget, and then we just leapfrogged, and we applied that leapfrogging approach to building a business. Same thing to guest posting, and there's a lot of good lessons that we derive from that we still apply to stuff today, just on different levels and in different volumes and things like that. But the leapfrog approach is really a great way to start to build up that authority. So, a lot of people are thinking like, well, I'd love to write for X, Y, or Z, but they won't even answer me. So that's where you got to put in some work up front, and you got to find sites that are a couple tiers down the ladder, and then work your way up to it. Um, and that has worked for many years now. And it also is, I think, as social media, as influencer marketing, all those things continue to grow in popularity, then you're going to see that same type of approach even applied across those. So it's kind of an evergreen strategy. Um, and in this case, that's how we got those placements, and that's how we kind of built from obscurity into very passively getting a lot of really high profile gigs to work on all the time.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good stuff to think about in there. In that, and so you say that you have these blog posts, and a lot of them, you did like a set amount, and then that's all you had to do. It still pays off. You still rank, and that's reassuring because many times, like when we think about like starting on just getting like a gig, a job, one freelance client, and then like doing some for yourself and getting more and more higher profile, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to think, oh man, I need to like send 10 proposals a day. I need to write, 3 articles a week. It's easy to like talk yourself out of something before you have even started. But then like I like how things worked out for you, how you said like you did this, and then the weekly column, and then you're able to get more and more, and then once you got a certain amount out there, then that was like as much traffic, as many clients as your agency could handle. So that does not necessarily have to be forever, or it could even switch over to easier things. Like, I mean, technically you're still guest posting, right? You're guest posting right this second on a podcast with me. It's just an audio form, not something that took you, hours or days to write. It's just we're here for 20, 30 minutes. We knock out an episode, and you're still getting yourself and your agency out there. But maybe things get easier over time as we, get the list, the email list built up. Once we get the clients and the ad budget built up and all those search engine rankings, all those things, things can get easier. So that's really reassuring. And so with all the possibilities out there, with all the things that people can and should be doing with the outreach and the link building and the SEO and all that, I'm sure some people are curious about what you and your agency can do for them. So do you feel like talking about that, unpacking some of that stuff?
Yeah. So I mean, the big thing is, if you have, or if you don't yet have, the content that is targeted for the types of people you want to attract, then we are able to help you determine what types of content and what types of even keywords and topics are going to appeal to the right type of audience. And that's kind of where I go back to saying that you have to avoid going down that trap where you're trying to replicate what you see other people doing, because they may or may not be trying to get the same kind of audience that you are. So that's the first part, is we help people figure out what content, what information, what message do you need to put out there in order to get the right type of people to come to you, right? And then the second part of that is we help them figure out how, through organic outreach, can we promote this? So how can we get people to mention it, share it, or link to it? And that's really where our agency specializes, is in creating and guiding the content, and then promoting that content so that it gains visibility organically. And that could be through your own website ranking. That could be through getting you to contribute to websites on which your content is going to rank, and you'll get leads that way. But that, in a nutshell, is what we do. It's all that we do now. We started out much broader as an SEO agency, and we've really narrowed in on that particular area as our specialty. So basically, if your difficulty is getting the right type of people to contact you, then that's where we can come in and help by using content and content promotion. I was on a podcast a few years ago, and Mike Campion, he said something that kind of stuck out to me. He said, the easiest thing to sell is the thing that people want, right? And so some people think like, well, I have to come up with this crazy offer or this unbelievable offer, or I have to make it like super cheap. They go through all these things of trying to figure out how to make something that people want. But what you really have to do is find the people who already want what you've made, right? And if there's nobody who wants what you've made, don't make it. Stop making it, make something different, right? You run into a problem. But if you focus all your efforts on finding people who want exactly what you offer, you're going to keep them around for a really long time. They're going to be very happy with what you do. And you're going to be really happy with them because they don't want you to change everything you do to a different kind of service, because all that means is that you didn't find the right customer in the first place. And so that, link building is link building. We build links and it helps people rank higher in Google. That's what it is. But at a higher level, what we do is help people get the people that actually want exactly what they're offering. They're in the right stage, they're in the right budget, they have the right mindset, they have the right expectations. And we do that by creating content that appeals to those people. And so that is, in my mind, one of the most effective ways. And it's not only with organic, you can do the same thing with audiences on paid ads, with audiences on social media, with email lists. But if you can find the people who love what you're doing, it makes business so easy. We keep customers for multiple years. The industry average is like 3 to 6 months. We have customers that have been with us since we started, right? And that's just really unheard of a lot of times. And it's because maybe 2 out of 10 people that come to us are that right fit with the right expectations and the right thing for our service. And those 2 people get in. And the other 8 people, unfortunately, they don't, because they're not the right fit to benefit from what we do. And so we like to practice what we preach. That's how we run our business. That's how we've grown our business. And then when clients do hire us to work with them, we go through a very similar process. And they may already have a lot of very clearly defined buyer personas. And so they task us with finding what topics are appealing most to those buyer personas, or maybe they even have the content and they just need to promote that content through outreach. And so we can work in different phases of that process, but at the end of the day, that's how we help, is we facilitate the completion of that, from identifying exactly who you want to be your customer, through making sure they can find the information that you've put out there to attract them.
I mean, that's a simple but powerful idea, that we might be making things way too hard on ourselves by trying to convince people a bit too much about what we have for offer, why not find the people, like you said, who are already looking for that? I mean, if you're the plumber in town, find people who with the busted water heater, right? Don't try to talk them into this thing. And there's enough people out there, and there are people, looking for answers to their problems. I mean, that makes total sense. And like you said, also many times we might be competing with the wrong person, pursuing the wrong thing, or just kind of need a little bit better strategy. And so you say that people might be at these different phases in their master plan. They might be like, targeting or need to be doing outreach. So how do people get in touch with you and your agency and schedule a call or something like that? How do they take the next step and reach out?
Yeah, so if they go to stellarseo.com, then there's a lot of request a consultation buttons throughout the website and forms. So it's pretty easy to find where to actually contact us. But basically, what we do with anybody who contacts us, we schedule a quick introductory 15-minute call. And the reason we do that is so we can hear about them, about what they want to accomplish, and within that 15 minutes, we generally get a pretty good idea of whether or not it makes sense to schedule a second call and then kind of start to unpack very specifically what they're trying to do, where they're at, all those things. So it's a pretty smooth process with us. You request a consultation. I'll be the one on the 15-minute call. In the history of our company, we just don't have salespeople. We tried it out a few times when we did the SEO agency thing, and what we found is that salespeople have a tendency to want to let 4 of 10 people through instead of the 2 of 10 people that really will have the most benefit. And so that's another key part of what we do is every single customer that works with our company talks to me, and then I figure out if they're actually going to be a good fit or not a good fit. And then from there, I kind of help facilitate that whole sales process with them, the consultative process, bringing them on. So it's a completely different experience once you do reach out to us, because I'm not a salesperson. I started as an SEO person with no sales or business experience. And so we approach everything from that. It's as if we own the website ourselves and we're trying to figure out what can we do to improve this website, or should we let the website go? Same thing. So stellarseo.com, fill out the form. We'll get on a call and then I'll hear whatever it is that the issues you're having, where you're at, what you're trying to do, and from there, we'll figure out if it makes sense to continue the conversation, or if there's a different type of service or marketing channel or something else that would probably be a better fit for you. So that's how we approach it.
Well, fantastic. Well, the place to go is stellarseo.com. That's STELLAR SEO.com. And you mentioned a few times in there, Travis, and you mentioned it just now, that there's this concept of being a good fit or not. So you out there in podcast land, you know that you need to get more customers, build the list, get the traffic, get more reach, but you might be a little unsure if you're the right fit or not. Well, this is the way to find out if you are the right fit or not the right fit, by going to stellarseo.com, fill in the form to get that consultation, and that way you can be chatting with Travis, the man, the myth, the legend himself, on that 15-minute call soon enough. stellarseo.com. We will see you there. And thanks, Travis, for stopping by and giving us a ton of ideas and kind of pushing us in the right direction, telling us where we need to go. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And like I said, I always love to talk about SEO and link building and content. It gets me fired up. The competitive part, it's fun. I just love what I do. And so I know that's a select group of people who actually get to say that they really love what they do. So if you're out there thinking about making a switch and doing something different, I'm telling you, I did, and it's the best decision I ever made.